What is going on, UFC card lovers? Welcome back here to another episode of UFC Card Talk, and this is the first episode for 2024, and I'm very excited to bring you, as you can see, it is a UFC card community conversation, the 7th installment I've done of that, and it is with one of the most popular UFC card content creators out there, and also most likable guys in the UFC card community. It is Joe at Joe's Card Stash. I'm sure all of you already who are watching this channel are already subscribed to his UFC card channel and following him on Instagram. But if you're not already, the link to his YouTube channel is in the description below. Me and Joe talked about everything to do with UFC cards, and it was a longer episode. It was a longer chat, so I have broken it down into two parts just because I know your guys' attention span is probably as long as what Kevin Lee's win record was in the UFC. But in the chat, we talked about everything from UFC Immaculate release, which I'm going to talk about in a second, to his experiences opening boxes on his channel and then selling the cards onwards on his eBay store. We then talked about him transitioning from Panini products to older Topps products and his favorite sets in both of those. And then to finish off part one, we talked about Panini's long-term value moving forward with Topps taking over the license. Before we get to that conversation, just a little bit of UFC card news. I did see on the UFC Card European page, one of the regular posters there, great guy, his name is Rick. I saw he did post about a John Jones card, 2023 Immaculate, and on the back, it was a relic card. On the back, it did disclose that this relic is not from any specific fighter or event. Now, before we have seen relics that are not becoming from any specific fight or event, but the fact that this relic on these 2023 Immaculate cards are stating they are not from any particular specific fighter is absolutely a new low that we have seen from Panini. Very, very disappointing here. That meaning that even if John Jones is pictured on the front of this card, that does not mean that that is John Jones's relic on the front of the card. That could be from Bob Brown off the street. They took his shirt, paid him $5 for it.
Jacob, keep your shirt on. No.
And whacked it in a UFC card. Absolutely despicable stuff. If it was me, I would not even be paying $200 for this absolute trash of a product that Panini have put out, full of these relics that are not even specific to what fighter wore them, or if a fighter wore them, or maybe they just bought a shirt or shorts at Walmart and chucked it in a card with a sticker auto. Absolute rubbish. Will not be buying this product at all, and that would be my advice to you guys. Those of you who are chasing the Bo Nickel autograph, good luck to you. I hope you hit it, but once again, that's just a complete gamble. Let's get to the UFC card community conversation, and best of luck to everyone in 2024. What is going on, UFC card lovers? Welcome back here to another UFC card community conversation. And this week, this episode, you can see the man sitting over to my left. This is a very special moment for me because I started off, when I started first getting into UFC cards, I YouTubed UFC cards and this man's face popped up. It was back, Joe, when you were doing... It was even before you, I think it might have been before you transitioned completely full-time to UFC cards, because you were doing, what was the series? You were doing like a little mini-series. It was called UFC Card Update. Yeah. You did, I think, 2 or 3 episodes, and then from there on, you obviously just continued on with UFC full-time. But as I said, this is completely full circle for me, and we're just talking about it because I feel so blessed to, obviously, as someone who's relatively small on YouTube, to have people like you, have people like Chicken, have Zach from Box Alarm Trading just come on and talk about UFC cards. It's very special for me, and I definitely very much appreciate your time. But yeah, I just watched your recent video too. It was a really great video on your update of 2023, the year, and that's a good place to start. How's this year been for you, Joe?
It's been fantastic. That's real quick, just to talk about you real fast. When you started making content, I was like, okay, now someone's making the content that I like to see. Somebody who's also very analytical about things, going over price movements and stuff like that, because you see that in other sports, but the UFC card market really doesn't have it. It's a space that I was very excited to see someone fill. So once you started making videos, I was also very excited to watch yours as well. And you know, I'm happy you found me and you like the stuff I was doing. This year has been great. If you watch my video, this is the first year I've actually not lost money dealing with UFC cards, which was my goal. You know, I feel like you and I are pretty similar. You set a lot of goals. I've seen you talk about things you want to do. That was my goal for the year, and to hit it is huge. And it was close. I mean, I literally was like, you know, the YouTube revenue I got, if that wasn't there, and selling one card would have put me in the negative. So it was very close. So it's been good, and you know, I'm excited for next year. Next year is interesting. I mean, we'll talk more about it, but next year, coming into this year, I knew what Panini was going to do. They'd done it for the last 2 years, so I had an idea of what was happening. This year, going forward, 2024, I have no idea what's going to come out, what everything's going to cost, how we buy it. I don't know anything. So in a way, it's exciting, but also I have no idea. You know, I might lose my ass this year, and you know, have to bow out and file for bankruptcy.
Well, you made, like, obviously you mentioned it in your video, like, the three, spoiler if people haven't watched it, I'm sure they all have by now, because this will be a week in the future. But you've come out ahead $300 on top, and then also, you know, your PC cards that you bought. That is like, that is my dream. And I know you said maybe some people, if I think people are crazy if they can't see the value in that and how good that is as an achievement like that. As I said, that is the living the absolute like card hobby dream. If you can not only like make a little bit of extra money, not even come out on even, and then of course, obviously add some really cool PC cards as well for the year. Like, dude, you're absolutely killing it, and obviously super happy for you. And you know, maybe we'll talk a little bit more off there or whatever, because you like, yeah, that's where I want to be. So congratulations on that. I think that's definitely not to be understated, and I think that's very, very cool. Yeah, next year is going to be crazy. We can get into that in a little bit. But I did want to sort of lead into, before we get to next year, obviously Immaculate is coming out in, well, it'll be a week's time, probably from when this video comes out. Can you sort of, are you going to be buying into Immaculate? Have you thought about getting, did you get into first off the line? Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that. Have you got plans to get Immaculate? Are you going to stay away from it?
For sure. I mean, it kind of goes into what we were just talking about. Immaculate was coming out. It's out of my price range. You know, I set limits to what I can spend on boxes, and you know, at first I thought they were $400 a box, but it looks like they're going to be $500 a box. So that's just too much for me. I don't think the value is there. Even with, you know, I saw the checklist, you know, Bo Nickel signing actually has added a lot of value to those boxes and stuff, but I just can't justify buying something for $500 that I last couple years of Immaculate, I don't like most of the cards, so it's just not going to lead to something where I could either make money or have stuff for my PC. So my plan with Immaculate was to try to get into first off the line at a very low price. And this was where I kind of messed up. I thought Immaculate was going to be $400 for a hobby box, and most of the first off the line tends to be about $50 to $100 more than a hobby box. That's usually where it bottoms out at. So my idea was to try to buy first off the line at $450, and then I was going to try to flip it, sell it almost immediately, and try to make $100 or $200 from the flip, and then buy a hobby box, which would make the hobby box about $300, which at that point I think it's the right value to open it. So I was, you know, the Dutch auctions, you watch them and they go down and down and down, and it got to, I think, 505, and I was going to let it go one more spot down, and then I was going to buy, and it never got there. It sold out at 505. So I didn't get it. And because of that, I'm not going to buy a hobby box. I can't justify buying a $500 Immaculate hobby box, as much as I opened it last year and it was super fun. And I think I didn't break even, but I did okay. I sold a Calvin Cater, you know, really low numbered mem auto immediately for half the box price. So, you know, it does kind of cancel itself out, but I'm going to be strict this year. I don't want to mess around. And the Burbank Card Show is coming up in February. That show has come up I've been to the last 2 of them. Every time I go, I don't have any money to buy anything, which frustrates the shit out of me. So this year I'm making a conscious effort. Like, I'm not going to buy Immaculate. I'm going to save my money and try to go to Burbank. Eric, UFC Card father's going to be there. I know he has a million cards I probably want to buy. I would rather give him my money than give Panini, this thing that who knows what I would get out of it. Yes, you might get that Bo Nickel auto that, makes you some money, but for the most part, you're probably going to get a bunch of shit. And I do wonder with Panini at this point, because it was probably before both of us started collecting, but when Topps lost the license, they put out that signature series, which was they just threw the kitchen sink in there. Like anything they had left lying around, they put in there. And I kind of feel like that's what Immaculate might be. There might be some really cool stuff, but it's going to feel very thrown together. I feel like it's probably going to be, here's everything we have laying around and we're just giving it to you guys. And so I don't know. I'm saying all this. I know I'm going to watch other people's videos and be really bummed that I don't have a box, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, well, you made some good points there to start with. As you said, like starting, we'll go reverse. But you made like, I think you've probably seen them as well. They're doing those sticker booklet autos with like 10 stickers on them. Like, I think that's proof right there in the pudding that, they are just like, we have these stickers. We're not gonna, what are they going to stick them on their lunch boxes when they leave or whatever? Like, they need to get rid of them. And I think it's a shame because I actually talked about this in my video that's coming out tomorrow, but last week for those guys watching now. Panini Immaculate it's the premier product, right? We have Prism, but then there's Immaculate, which is like the absolute premier product for the year. But we still get sticker autos. Like, I think it's a bit of a joke. Like, there should be always just on-card autos for Immaculate. Yeah. And as we said, like, Panini just going to want to get rid of these stickers as soon as they can, and this is look like it's going to be their last product. So of course they're just going to smash the sticker autos, probably more so than the on-card autos. And I agree, if it wasn't for the Bo Nickel auto chase, because this is his first Panini auto, he had redemptions in Prism, nothing in Select, and now we have his official autographs, and some of them will be on card by the looks of it. So that's really the only saving grace for Panini, I think, with this product, because that'll be a massive chase. I spoke about this previously with Zach in a video, but like, I've looked over the data just recently, and obviously we all know UFC cards have just been slowly going down the past 18 months. But like, Bo Nickel, really, his prices, they have been like a unicorn. Maybe like he's basically, you could compare him. We can't compare him to Hazmat now because everyone's prices were out when Hazmat was his rookie card in 2021, and it was obviously a different market in general. But like, I was shocked at some of the prices for Bo Nickel. Like, I think he had a PSA 10 red prism selling for $500 and something. Like, that's ridiculous for what the rest of the cards you can get at the moment. So having his auto, on-card auto, rookie auto for Immaculate is going to be massive for them. And I think if they didn't have that, I don't know how well that product would sell in general, because I think a lot of people like you probably going to sit on the fence a little bit more and wait to see what happens with the potential of Topps coming next year, and prices of Topps Chrome boxes. We're going to have no idea where they set those at. So I think it makes sense for a lot of people who aren't too concerned with Immaculate, because Immaculate hasn't had the best secondary pricing as well, unless it's obviously massive rookie with an on-card auto. Every other fighter, it just doesn't really seem to be a product that does well on the second market. So I can understand why you want to sit on the fence and save your dollars. Speaking of saving dollars, obviously in that recent video, which was a great video, and people obviously check that video out where Joe explains his 2023 recap, selling the boxes, not selling the boxes, selling the product that you get out of the boxes is something that really interests me, just because I don't have access to that. I don't have access to any sort of decently priced retail or hobby boxes to rip, just because it's so much more expensive for me to obtain here. It really, minuses out the chance of ever pulling something worthwhile to cover the cost of the box. But that is something I still find super intriguing, super interesting, because it's something that you've done now for the last few years, and you've seemed to have done it quite successful. And you mentioned, along with Zach as well, Box Alarm, shout out to him and Eric. But they also mentioned that they did well out of the premium box set that you did out of 2023 Prism. Can you sort of speak a little bit more about that as to what cards did well for you? Because you said you about doubled your initial box cost for that product. Just speak about that in general and maybe help people understand what cards sold well, maybe sold better than others. Was it rookies? Was it autos? And just anything else you want to touch on that, just because I think that's really interesting, not only for me to hear, I'm sure, but a lot of other people who are interested in that sort of avenue when it comes to UFC cards.
For sure. Yeah, that was by far the only product I would say that really, I mean, that it doubled, and yeah, I mean, it almost tripled what I paid for it. So, and it was something I'd never done before. I'd noticed that they've made premium box sets. They did the 2021 version as well. And I had heard people talk about it in other sports, like, you buy the box sets, you have the stars, you can sell the stars, but then you can sell all the smaller people that people PC. I made quite a bit of money selling Calvin Caters, Josh Emmett's, all these different people that, just certain people PC, and they wanted that card, and it really only exists in that box set. So it was a lot of work. That was probably the most work I did all year, was selling those cards, because I was individually listing them on eBay. I did one lot that I sold to the Globals specifically, and that was recently. I just had a rookie lot, and I'm like, I can't list every one of these one at a time for $3 a piece, because it's just crazy. And I sent some to ComC, which also was, kind of similar. I sold them each for $3, but they did all the photographing and listing and all that stuff, which is helpful. But it was really the bigger cards that, once you started doing the math, you're like, okay, the Bo Nickel, the Hasbulla, the Jack de la Madalena, the Alex Pereira, all of those are going to pay for that box almost immediately. And then you have 300 cards that are numbered to 99. It just seems smart. And so I grabbed one, and it was one of the same thing as the Immaculate. It got to the very bottom right before it was going to cap out at what they say it's going to start at 750. It'll go down to 400. That was for Immaculate. I don't remember what the box set was at, but right before the bottom is when it capped out, and I just grabbed one. And when I got it in hand, I started listing them, and it just sold like crazy. Other things about UFC card selling, it's interesting because I also sell other sports, and that's the one thing that is kind of different with me. I feel like most UFC card people don't deal with other sports. So I do sell basketball and football every once in a while. I've gotten into baseball a bit. And the one thing you'll notice with UFC cards is you just don't have the eyes on it. There's just not as many collectors. I recently listed a basketball card that I pulled. It was probably from one of the videos you were watching from the very beginning. I opened a 2020 Prism NBA blaster box that I got at Target, and I pulled a Tyrese Halliburton, who's a basketball player who's doing very well right now. And I've been sitting on this rookie card forever. So I was like, okay, I should finally sell it. He's doing really, really well. And I listed it, and I think in an hour I had 20 watchers. And you could list the most rare Sean O'Malley card, and you would never get that many eyes, because there's just so many more collectors in other sports. So with UFC, you do have to be, especially if you do buy it now, you have to be patient. Sometimes it takes me 2 months to sell a card. It's just because there's just not that many people looking for them. It feels like it is because we're in this world, but really in the general, there's just not that many collectors, and hopefully that gets bigger. I do have a lot of hope that, especially with Fanatics push with marketing, that more people are going to know about these cards, and this will grow. But right now, when you're selling UFC cards, you got to be patient, unless you're going to do, the auctions, which I do as well. The other thing is, if you're riding the hype of, Prism just comes out, you want to sell things right away. You probably want to put it up for auction, just because you're going to get the most money from that. So in that case, you do want to sell very quickly and just hope that people are interested in, whatever fighter you've put up there. But that's really the thing with UFC cards is be patient, but also that's the stupidest thing, but be patient, but also be fast. Be fast with hype and be patient with cards. Like I listed a Demetrius Johnson autograph that I bought earlier in the year, and I just decided I didn't want it. I waited 6 months because no one is really thinking about, Mighty Mouse. He's not even in the UFC. So I knew I could be patient, and finally someone came along and said, "Oh, I would love that card." And that's you kind of got to wait for people to find it on eBay. But yeah, and so it's funny because we're going to be talking about going into the future. Next year, I have no idea. Like, does Topps do premium sets or anything like that? Like, that was my big money maker from this year, and I don't know that I'm going to have that next year. So that's where next year is a big question mark.
Yeah, you made a really good point, obviously in your previous video as well, about how at the moment, graded UFC cards in particular, there's just not the value there should be. Like, I mean, PSA 9s, you're lucky if you're getting raw prices, to be honest. That's if someone wants the card. And then obviously PSA 10s, you could maybe sort of correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like PSA 10s, a general rule with other sports, is you're looking at least normally 3-4 times raw value, where in UFC it's sort of around that double mark, which it's it's such slim margins. Obviously, when you're taking fees and things into as well into consideration, like you made a good point that there's been such a rush through Panini products in the last few years. Grading's become much more popular. People trying to chase that added value to their cards that they pull or buy or whatever, whether it's, pulling from a box and grading like you've had experience with, maybe buying raw grading, which you've also had experience with. But people are getting these cards graded and there's just an influx because as you said, the eyes of demand in general is just not there for UFC, and it's sort of hurting the market itself. And I'm not really sure what can be done to sort of fix that because that's just the cycle, I guess. And as you said, until Tops through Fanatics, I'm sure I've got a good feeling that they're gonna get a lot more fighters involved in breaking cards. We've already seen it a little bit. I think even has Bo Nichols started now or something? I think he's anyway. I feel like Fanatics are going to use their promotional powers. They're going to put money behind fighters to start breaking products, to start putting it on their social medias, and just sort of increase the marketing for these cards in general. Because that's one thing that UFC, I feel, struggle compared to other sports is, and maybe they don't have the demographic for the supporters or the fans of UFC to be buying cards in general like the other sports, but I feel like UFC struggles a little bit because they don't have the knowledge. Like the fans don't even know the cards exist.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if maybe if more fans knew, hey, I could get a signed card, whether it's a sticker or obviously preferably on card auto of a card of their favorite fighter, I think that would be very enticing for a new wave of UFC card community members. So it's going to be interesting to see. And obviously, yeah, we can touch a little bit on that with Pops and Fanatics a little bit later on in the conversation. But I've sort of lost my thought now. I lost the other thing you made a good point on. But yeah, I mean, the graded cards is a problem. And then yeah, I don't know what we could do. I don't know what we can do other than create videos, make content, and just sort of help the word gets out there. But we'll have to wait and see. And as you said, like comparing to other sports, it's just not there at the moment. And I agree with you. I think one day there will be, and I think people who are buying UFC cards now are probably, if we skip on 10 years in the future, I think they're like people who are buying now are going to pay off compared to them. But I think the short term, as you were hinting at as well, I don't think the flips are there or the money's to be made short term at the moment with UFC. But that will probably change in the future. We'll have to wait and see.
No doubt.
I want to, you sort of have spoke about in previous videos, you've been buying older Tops UFC cards more recently, more so than any singles of the newer products. Can you talk a little bit about why you have been leaning more towards top cards and the Tops UFC cards, and maybe which cards are the Tops UFC cards are the ones that you've been, drawing your eyes to and picking up of your favorite fighters?
For sure. So there's two types of Topps UFC cards that I've been buying for two different reasons. And you've talked about this in your videos before. I've been buying a ton of round one. Now, round one Topps cards, I don't think are the greatest cards in the world. They're kind of just, the designs, whatever, the photography's, usually out of focus and not great, but I think they're very important cards in the history of the hobby. So I feel like getting ones, especially ones that are in good condition, because they've already been around for so long now and they've been banged up. So there's just not many of them. If you can find very good versions of GSP's rookie or Anderson Silva's rookie or BJ Penn's rookie, all these guys have rookies in that product. I've been buying those up as much as I can because I feel like they're dramatically underpriced for what they should be. So that's one thing that I'm buying. But like I said, I don't think they're the greatest cards in the world. It's just I think they're important. So that's one side of things I've been doing. And then I've been buying other sets again. Like one thing I've loved about your channel, and Zach as well, I feel like most of the time when you guys talk about cards, I'm like, man, I love those cards too. We're very like, we like the same stuff. So you've mentioned Finest a lot. Like I love Finest cards, like 2011 Finest, 2013, like 2012. I don't think I have any, but I think those cards are beautiful, and those are better to me than Panini just because they use action photography much better. The designs were there. They did on-card autos. There's a million things that they did better that I just think are nicer. And not to mention, the print runs were so much smaller that they're just, I don't think so many people that are chasing, these Panini products, a red or a blue select or something like that, like do an eBay search. Like you're going to get 1,000 of those. And you look at top stuff, look up a Max Holloway 2000, whatever, 2018 Topps Chrome. You're going to get 6 cards pop up. And that to me is more, I like the idea of that rarity, that it's more of a treasure to me, because that's been the biggest problem with Panini is overprinting. I don't think, I've been beating this drum for a while, but I don't think people realize, especially people who are so obsessed with these kabooms and downtowns and these things that they're like, you mentioned it early on in one of your videos. It's produced rarity. It's manufactured rarity that we put an elephant print on something and told you it's rare, so you want it. But is it a nice looking card? Like, like that's the thing. And I feel like most of the time with Topps, I look at those cards and I'm like, that's a beautiful card that I want to collect. More than with Panini, I'm like, oh, it's a downtown that looks like it was made, in Photoshop in 2006 and the person was 7 years old. I just, so that's why I collect, those type of Topps sets. I think they did a better job, and I'm hopeful that the new people in Topps will have that same aesthetic. I'm really hoping, but we have no idea. It's a whole new company basically.
Yeah, it's going to be because, like, I think there's a lot of older Topps collectors who seem to think that now that Topps are going to be coming back, most likely in 2024, it's going to be back to the old stuff, which, I mean, you probably of all people could speak on it, because you've seen more Topps related products with previous sports, whether it be baseball or whatnot. But obviously that's even changed so much more now compared to what it was even 3-4 years ago when Topps had the license for UFC. We had the big boom in 2021, and they've seen now that they can come up with like taco refractors and these other just ridiculous parallels, which at least this is the way I see it. They have Panini, especially, they have all these colored parallels because the more colored parallels they can have, the more boxes they can make to fill to fill these parallels with. So, the more parallels they can come up with, the more numbered cards, which we all think are rare because it's got a number on it, but like you got to double think that, okay, well, this has got a number on it, but they've also got 5 other red parallels as well that are pretty similar for the same product that they're just making in order to make more boxes, basically. So, and that was the other thing I was thinking of before was like, yeah, how is Topps going to sort of keep the older generation of UFC card collectors happy, or maybe they won't even matter. It's going to be interesting. Maybe they don't even think about that, because I think there's either going to be really great products that come out and people are going to get really excited, or people are going to be a little bit disappointed by the latest releases for Topps. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward. And yeah, I think you said it with Finest, like say it as often as I can. Finest has been my favorite set for UFC, probably followed by Bloodlines. As you said, 2011 Finest, 2012 is actually really quite a nice set as well. But if I was to rank them, I would go 2013 Finest, 2011 Finest, and then back to 2012. But yeah, on card autos, the Diamond Refract, especially the colored ones, and as you also talked about, like the blues, they're beautiful, beautiful cards just to have in hand. And I really hope that Finest is another product that we see for UFC moving forward with Topps licensing. So now we've just speaking about some of your favorite sets with, buying some older Topps cards. Do you have an overall favorite set? I know you've previously stated it's one of the 2021 products because that's when you came into the UFC cards in general, but has that now changed now that you've been looking back into some older Topps products?
Definitely. Yeah. It's funny because 21 Prism, which I've mentioned in past videos, is the most, I don't know what's the word, sentimental. Like it's the one where I started. It was the first hobby box I opened. Everyone was chasing that Hamzat rookie. I opened it with Cheeto. Like it just means a lot to me. But honestly, objectively looking back at it, there's a few cards I like in that set, but I don't terribly love the design. And I don't think it's the best thing Panini's ever made. So if you were to ask me my favorite Panini set, it would be 21 Select, which came out not too long after that. And I think that as far as like them using photography, design, there's more cards in that set that I actually really like. So that would probably be my favorite Panini set. It's, just at the right time when I started collecting. It has Cheeto's rookie autos in that set. And it's just, I loved opening it. But now Topps definitely, like, my favorite set it would most likely be a Topps set, not a Panini set. And if I were to pick one, it's hard to pick one because I have lots that I mentioned. I already mentioned the finest sets, but probably be 2018 Topps Chrome. I think that's really where Panini hit the right mark of photography, parallels, design. I think the design on that is super elegant. It shows the photography really, really well. The only thing I think that lacks in that set is the inserts. I don't think the inserts are that great, but I think everything else, there's a lot of on-card autos. It's just beautiful. And, I'd love to open a box of it. It's so expensive. I was talking to Chicken actually yesterday, and we're talking about the older wax is so out of whack as far as pricing. Like, you open a box of Topps Chrome for $800, you're lucky if you can get $150 worth of value. I mean, you hit a Sean O'Malley, maybe if you get it graded, possibly you can get like $300 back or something. It's nuts. And the farther back you go, it just shows you what rarity does to box values. Because a round one box is like $2,000. There's no cards in that set. I mean, maybe you get a PSA 10 GSP rookie that could maybe possibly touch the cost of that box, but it's so overpriced for what they are, which sucks because that's the stuff that I want to open more than anything is that older product, but the value is just awful. But luckily, guys like Chicken open it. He buys cases of it at obscene prices, and he'll do breaks where people can try to buy in at a decent price. And he just does it. I don't think he's making any money. He just does it for the love of, opening old product that's sitting in somebody's closet. So I think I answered the question. Yeah, 2018 Topps Chrome.
No, you definitely answered it. You answered it twice actually. We got the favorite Panini one in there as well. But yeah, you're 1000% correct because what were those boxes worth back in like even 2018? Only what is it, 5 years ago now? Was it $60 maybe for a hobby box?
Yeah,
And as you
it's
said,
crazy.
now they're like $1,000 or a few hundred. Like it's crazy. And as you said, like which something I didn't give thought to before because I've actually thought about obviously 2018 is a pretty awesome year for especially if you get a museum box. A museum 2018, you've got Kamaru Usman's rookie, you've got Sean O'Malley's, you've got uh
Israel.
Adesanya's, and then is 2018 also Ngannou's rookie year maybe?
No, he has a great card in that though. That's one I have in my PC where
Oh,
he's
they're the one with over him, yeah.
forget the over him.
But yeah, that's something I haven't given thought to before. even if you like pull some of those awesome cards, and as you said, like even if you were to get PSA 10s, and especially back with 2009 Topps round one, for the price of that, you're still not even scratching, as you said, the
Yeah.
cost of the box, which is pretty wild that even, but I guess we'll see what happens with those in the future. And it'd be interesting to see what's going to happen, because what Panini Prism, when that came out, how much was that for a hobby box? It was a bit before my time in 2021, but was it around $500 plus? Was it more than that for a hobby box? Prism?
21
1,000?
Prism?
Yeah.
It was 1,000. Yeah. I paid
Yes.
$900 for the one I opened with Cheeto.
So
I,
that's what
I
it like
split
it,
it with my friend.
so that's what I mean. Like, which is a great question. Great, sorry, should I say segue into my next question? Because I'm super interested about this. And the more I've thought about this, I've gone back from thinking, okay, Tops is going to be coming, because I sort of had this feeling that Tops was going to be coming sooner than later, even at the start of the year. So I was like, oh, Tops is going to come. People are going to see these older, like new Tops designs. They're going to think more about the older Tops designs, especially for the collectors who started in the time that we did and was before Tops era. And they're going to go back and look at these older Tops cards, and that's going to rise the tide for the older Tops value. But now I've sort of done a bit of a backflip on that over the last 3 or 4 months, and thinking that it's going to be more the opposite. Like, if we only have 3 years of Panini Prism, especially, I'm not saying every select card or every Chronicles or every Optic or whatever. I think it's more going to be the Prisms and some select cards. But if we only have 3 years of those, over the duration of the next 5, 10 years, we're going to have that many more Tops products and only 3 years of Panini cards. So I'd like to get your thoughts, theories, whatever you want to talk about. Where do you think Tops value is, Panini's value, sorry, is going to be long term?
That's an interesting one. Just giving everybody the look behind the curtain. I got these questions already from Damien, so I've thought about this for a couple of days, because that's really an interesting question, because it's something that's very unique in sports cards. There haven't been many companies that have produced cards and then gone away. The only thing I could think of that's similar is Fleer. In the 80s, Fleer was a very big company in baseball and basketball. That's what Michael Jordan's rookie card is 86 Fleer. It doesn't exist anymore. So, those cards obviously still sell very well. And, it has to do obviously with the rookie, with Michael Jordan, it's very much the rookie, but a lot of people just really like those cards. And I feel like, if Panini never gets the license again, there definitely be a segment of people that were like, oh, those cards are great. They look so different than Tops. And I think they will hold value. What I think is going to hold it back, though, was Panini overproduced. And, again, I've said this a million times. So I think, it's going to be the high end stuff from Panini that sells really well. The golds, the really, really short printed stuff. I have no idea things like, color blasted kabooms and stuff like that. Again, because I feel like they're so manufactured as far as the rarity, but they are pretty rare. And maybe people are just going to look back and say, whoa, those are really different than what Tops is doing. And it does lead to that. But it's a great question, because I don't know that anyone really knows. It's very hard to say. It's also very hard to say, where the UFC card market's going to be in 10 years in general. Like, will UFC be, 10x what it is now? Will have Dana and them brought it to a whole new heights? Will have, PFL and all the stuff that's happening with different promotions change what we think about UFC cards? Is very hard to know. For me, and that's really kind of like sculpted how I collect. My collection is getting way more about my experience with things, like kind of like you've talked about. Like, you wanted to buy that Sean O'Malley card because you were watching that fight and it was the card you found. Like, I really want things to be very particular to me, so it doesn't matter what happens with the card hobby. If it's great in 10 years, great. If these are all not worth much, at least I have these things that reminded me of this great time in my life. So, but yeah, looking into the future is hard.
Yeah, it wasn't an easy question, and I think, like, personally, I just think it's fun because no one knows, but it's definitely, I think it's fun to think about and sort of conversate about. And I talk about speculating. And I just personally, like, I just think it's fun to speculate. And full disclaimer, I hope no one listens to anything that I ever say and be like, "Oh, Damien said this," So this is what's like. No, of course not. Like, half of my stuff that I like to talk about is literally just speculation, and I think it's fun. and enjoyable content to make. But yeah, you made some great points, and even just hearing me talk, even hearing you talk just now, it really sounds like you've turned a page. And this is like, obviously, I didn't prompt you about this now, but like, it really does sound like you've sort of turned a page in your collecting journey, just maybe the last 12 months, 6 months, about how you said, like, it sort of sounds like you're becoming more responsible about the cards that you spend your money on now, and it's less about trying to find dollar value and more just about the cool cards that you want to own. So that's very cool to hear. And as I said, I obviously that this is just from the outside in. I could be wrong, but it definitely sounds like that's something that has happened in your hobby journey recently.
For sure. Yeah. I think everyone kind of does this in collectibles and memorabilia. Is like you got to kind of take a look at what you're doing and decide why you're doing it and stuff like that. And that's really, we'll get into it more. I think we're going to talk about more like things we want to collect later on, and I'll get more into this. But yeah, it is something that I, you asking that question had me think about it quite a bit. So.
Speaking of looking forward a little bit, I know we've basically just decided that we don't know what to expect next year, but have you got a bit of a wish list? Maybe just things you would like to see with Topps moving forward when they have the UFC license, particular sets, anything you would like to particularly see within some inserts, improvements you would like to see? Maybe just talk a little bit about what you're hoping to see from UFC moving forward in 2024.
This is number one bullshit.